Hey, baseball fans, Mac McGee here for the BCR. Make sure to subscribe and become a member today. All offseason, we have a jam-packed schedule to keep you entertained and informed during the MLB offseason. Weekly shows like MLB Today, and for you country club members, Braves Country Today, going over the world of baseball, how it affects all teams, including the Atlanta Braves. Once Upon a Pastime series, Thursday nights, we'll take a deep dive on the history of this great game. And on Friday nights, Braves Country Theater, we're going to turn back the clock and bring you historic games from the past. We'll bring you a game from yesteryear. That's Braves Country Radio, the BCR. Coming this spring, a jam-packed loaded spring training schedule, wall-to-wall coverage of Major League Baseball. Pitch-by-pitch, play-by-play, the Atlanta Braves, and our out-of-town doubleheaders. American League, National League, we'll see you there for the classic call of the great game of baseball. Saturday, December 13th, 3 p.m. Eastern, it's the annual battle, the Army-Navy game in Baltimore, Maryland. Braves Country Radio will bring it to you live from coast to coast and around the globe. A salute to all the men and women who have served and continue to serve this great nation. This year will be the 126th meeting between the Army Black Knights and the Navy Midshipmen. Join us live and we'll bring you play-by-play of America's game, Army versus Navy. 8 of the last 11 matchups being decided by one score, including the double overtime thriller in 2022. It's Army-Navy.
We are Army, Navy.
Navy-Army. America's game, heard around the world.
You're in Braves country. You're in Braves country.
Good morning. I had the mic potted down. I just realized that. And so, what you missed was a whole hell of a lot of nothing. I was just saying that I hope that you had a good Thanksgiving and looking forward to a good Black Friday. A lot of football on. I forgot I was doing some stuff in the studio the other night, recording clips for the new season and whatnot, and I turned off the microphone. But anyways, good to see you from Mission Radio, 1700 AM. Welcome in as we're going live on Mission Radio, and we got a couple other stations that have started to pick us up as well. But if you don't chime in, we don't shout you out. So good to see you, and hopefully everybody's had a good Thanksgiving. Man, I tell you what. I was telling my mom after we ate last night, I said, I didn't think about the fact that I volunteered to do a show this morning and not thinking about the turkey hangover I was going to have. Man, I don't know about y'all, but the day after Thanksgiving, I'm always just like lethargic because, man, that tryptophan's a real thing. I don't care what anybody says. Some people say it doesn't affect me, whatever. The moment that stuff kicks in, man, and I didn't even eat as much turkey as I normally do. But as soon as it kicks in, I could feel it, and I started falling over. Woke up in probably about a 15-minute combat nap and woke up in time to see the end of the Cowboys game. What a hell of a game that was. And then what a great performance last night by Joe Burrow. But this is a baseball show, so we're going to talk baseball. The Armchair Quarterbacks will be back next week, by the way, on Thursday, as usual. Obviously, wasn't going to have the guys do what they did. No, John, I don't drink on Thanksgiving, man. It's not my thing. I know it's a thing up north. It's really not that common in the South to get plowed on Now, a lot of folks get plowed the night before Thanksgiving. But when you actually have Thanksgiving, like, it's just, I don't know, man, sitting around getting liquored up for the family just isn't really a thing that happens in the South much. It's more on Thanksgiving Day. Typically, you tie one on Wednesday night. Bars are packed in the South on Wednesday night. And then you combat that with all the food you're going to eat the next day. And then usually, now some folks do go out on Thursday night after they're done with Thanksgiving. I used to when I worked in the bar business. I don't do that anymore. But I used to go out, or I had to work that night because it's one of the busiest nights of the year in the bar business as well. Just that whole Wednesday, Thursday thing. And then you start getting ready for the football side of it with college football in the South, really big, obviously, always has been, always will be. And you've got nothing but college football wall-to-wall day. I do know that there's an NFL game. I don't know how many of y'all are planning on watching the college games today, or if you're, oh, well, I know what Robert's going to do. Robert's hoping those dogs will hunker down. Georgia Tech is today. A bunch of fun games. I wish they would do a little more on Friday and split up, because you have so many great rivalries on Friday, Saturday. It would be nice to break it up a little bit. The one thing that is nice this year, I will give them credit, is that you do have a classic rivalry in every window today. So I'm particularly not that interested in the Bears-Eagles because I don't have a lot of fantasy players on either team. I do have Caleb Williams, but I did the smart thing and started Dak Prescott last night in the leagues that I have Williams. So I don't really have a lot of interest in it. I do have Barkley in one league, so I might check in on it. But I'm really looking forward to what is going to be a fun Friday and Saturday. Florida State, Florida's tomorrow. Hashtag it just means less. But it's going to be played, and we're going to go join some friends, and I look forward to that. But outside of that, I mean, you're talking about this is the weekend for college football. It really is. The NFL kind of takes a back. They've given the NFL front and center on Thursday now. I think Navy played last night. I didn't even know that game was going on till I was about midway through the Bengals game last night. I was like, there is a college game. I didn't see any promotion for it. But today you've got Georgia Tech. Obviously, that's a big one in Braves country. Touch on that real quick. The biggest thing I like about that, since we didn't do a football show, we'll kind of jam it in together. I like the over in that game more than anything else. I can see a scenario, and you keep seeing the line move up and down, 13.5, 14.5, 13.5, 14.5. I can see a scenario where Georgia Tech makes it another nail biter. Remember last year, Georgia Tech should have beaten Georgia, and they really played with their food and spit the bit in the second half of the fourth quarter. This year it's in Atlanta, but I don't think they're sneaking up on Georgia this year. I think last year Georgia probably didn't really take them all that seriously, but that's going to be a fun game. But the over-under is 59.5. I don't see Georgia Tech slowing down that Georgia offense. And the Georgia defense is going to give up some big chunk plays as they have all year. So I like the over in that game. The Ole Miss, Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl, that's a fun one. We're going to have that kicking off here in just a couple hours. And one of my favorite ones that is becoming, it's only because they consistently are on this day. The other games have moved around. We were getting Egg Bowls. Traditionally, they used to be on Thursday night. And when the NFL started going to Thursday night football, they got rid of it. I wish they would put the Egg Bowl back on Thursday night. It was a great, great college football rivalry. And we'll find out after this game. It's either going to be early tomorrow or late tonight. Lane Kiffin's going to decide, does he stay or does he go? But the game that I look forward to, I don't have a dog in the hunt. I just like it now because This used to be the weekend that Oklahoma played Nebraska. Now Nebraska plays Iowa, and that should be a fun one. It's going to be cold there. It's 26 degrees right now as we speak. And so I like the under in that one. And the under's actually moved up a point. It's 39.5. I like the under in that one. I don't think Nebraska's going to move the ball much on Iowa. And when Iowa gets a lead, they like to sit on it. And then, of course, tonight you've got the big one in the Southeastern Conference. I'm sure there's a nickname for this, but anyways, the Texas A&M Texas rivalry was renewed when the two of them ended up back in the same conference. I'm glad this is back, and I'm glad to see that it's back on Fridays. It was like that when I was a little kid. So looking forward to that one, Texas A&M and Texas. And then tomorrow you got a whole slate. You got the Iron Bowl. You got the Sunshine State Showdown. Robert's asking me, are you streaming? Robert, I can. The thing is, I'm leaving to go to a watch party for the Florida State-Florida game. So I'm trying to find a radio stream that will be like a whip around like I found with the NFL last Sunday, so that y'all can chime in and talk during the games. But I can't change anything once it starts because I'm out of here. I'm going to go enjoy the Sunshine State Showdown. I know it doesn't mean anything to anybody nationally, but it still means something to us here in the great state of Florida. So I'm going to go watch that. But I'm going to try to do it. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to find that college football. I'm looking for something. If anyone's got any ideas, I'm looking for something. It's not on Sirius XM. I don't carry Sirius. It's something that plays that will very similar to what we. I think I know what to look up now, but I haven't had a chance to do it because I have to wait till the games kick off. All right, let's get into the world of baseball after I bloviated all about some college football nonsense. But we don't do the college football show yesterday, so that's got a lot to do with it. Anyways, those are, by the way, the picks that I like a lot this weekend. And honestly, if you're asking me about the Florida State-Florida game, I think the under's the play. I think these are two. First of all, I think Florida, you would think that they're going to show up because it's at home, but there's a good chance that the Florida kids have just, after they got their heads kicked in by Tennessee last week, they may just freaking fold up shop. Kentucky-Louisville is another interesting one. And, of course, you got Clemson, South Carolina. All these great Vanderbilt, Tennessee, all these great rivalries, they may not mean something to you, but those of us who follow those teams, we don't give a damn about the records. We just want to beat their team. I was walking our dogs this morning, and a guy came out with a Florida State hat on that was putting the trash out on the road. And as he was heading back to his house, I noticed the hat, and I asked him, I said, is that an FSU hat? Because I couldn't tell he was pretty far away. He said, yes, sir. And I told him, I said, if you can start the season with kicking Alabama's ass and end the season by beating Florida, though the middle part sucked, I'll take that any day of the week. So that's what I'm hoping for, somehow to squeak out a win, even though we're not playing very good football. All right. Let's get into the baseball stuff, I should say, not the football stuff, the baseball stuff, as we're going to have a lot of stuff to go over here, mainly because there have been a few moves, and I know some of y'all may not have paid attention to it, but there have been a few moves, and one of the bigger moves that affects the Braves off the jump is the fact that you have the Mets making a big trade, a big splash. If you missed it earlier, they traded Marcus Semien, or they traded for Marcus Semien, and the Mets traded Brandon Nimmo in cash. And the cash was to help pay for some of Nimmo's contract. And basically, this is a cost-saving move for both teams, if you look at the big picture. It's cheaper for the Rangers to carry Brandon Nimmo. It also gives them a true leadoff hitter. I've always been a big Nimmo fan. I'm glad that I can finally pull for him. I still think his talent, his skills, I won't say his talent, his skills have been diminished a little bit. He's not the offensive guy that he was, or a defensive guy that he was. And offensively, he was okay last year, but he's not, you can't put him in center field anymore. I mean, I guess you could, but he's a liability if you put him in center field. And with Marcus Semien is a little more expensive. And he's got, what I believe, 2-3 years left on his deal. The difference between the Nimmo trade, or the Nimmo contract and the Semien contract, is the Nimmo contract still has several years left on it. So they're going to have a guy by the age of 38 that's going to be trying to play leadoff. By that time, I think he'll be bottom of the order, and you're still going to be paying him around $20 million a year. Now, big picture, when you see the qualifying offer went to $22 million this year, by the time you get to 5-6 years down the road, he's going to be an affordable bat. Will his production be there? My guess would be no, but he's going to be an affordable bat. And Semien goes over and he solidifies the middle of that infield, though he didn't have great numbers last year. But we all know what Semien's capable of, and he is getting older, but defensively the Mets are trying to get better, and he's a much better defensive second base option than anything that the Mets currently had on their roster. I mean, yeah, you could in theory have, now here's a inquiring mind kind of stuff, because I know a lot of Braves fans always ask about this. Marcus Semien is your second baseman if you're the New York Mets. Francisco Lindor is definitely your shortstop. Little Acuna, does he get moved? He probably will, but I don't think he gets moved to the Braves unless it becomes a situation where they can't get rid of him, et cetera, because the Mets are going to want the moon and stars for Acuna, Little Acuna, because they know the Braves would like to add him to the roster even as a bench piece, right? Just because of the fanfare. So that's the problem, is that you don't want to get raked over the coals in a trade by someone in your own division. But it is something to keep an eye out for. The Boston Red Sox acquired Sonny Gray from the St. Louis Cardinals, and to me that's a big one because, first of all, it ends all for the last several years. Braves fans are constantly asking about Sonny Gray, and they're constantly commenting him on X. Let's go get him, because he's from the Braves country area. He's pretty expensive for what you're going to get for him, but I don't hate the move by the Red Sox. I think it's a solid move all in all. What I do hate is for the St. Louis side of it, it looks like they're going to be in a full-blown rebuild. So if you're in a Cardinal fans, you might be looking at a situation where they're going to tank this year. Now, maybe they moved him so they could go get someone younger. Who knows? But Dylan Cease is off the board, if you missed that. Dylan Cease signs a 7-year, $210 million deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. And so I know we got some Blue Jays fans that check in on us from time to time, so congratulations on that. I think we still have the clip. There you go, Blue Jays. Blue Jays get their guy. If you're asking me, honest engine, I have question marks about the Dylan Cease move. I know he was adored by Braves fans. I still think it's because he's Spencer Strider's doppelganger. But 7 years, 210 for a guy who's kind of been like this. Now, I do think the talent's there. And if they think that they can fix him, it's going to be a solid deal for him. But it's not like Toronto got a discount because he happened to be the number one ranked pitcher on the free agent market. And so, with that being said, they got the guy they wanted, because if you're a Blue Jays fan, if you're the Blue Jays, You definitely believe that you're a World Series contender. Why the hell wouldn't you? You went to Game 7 extra innings this year. Why would you not think you're going to be a contender next year? You just fortified your starting rotation with veteran leadership, although it's hard for me to call a guy a true veteran when he's still going through the growing pains, right? But he's still a veteran. It's not like he's a rookie. He's not like Trey Savage, who just popped up out of nowhere and you don't know what the hell you're going to get from him next year. You would think he's going to be very good, but you don't know what the hell you're going to get. So the Blue Jays get him, and the Braves did make a minor deal. They signed Joel Payamps the other day, 1 year, $2.25 million deal. It's not anything to get overexcited about. The upside that you would love is this. If you look at the bare numbers, in 2023 and 2024, Payamps had a 2.78 ERA in 137 appearances. He's a reliever. He struck out 136 batters, walked only 35, and had a whip of 101 during that span. That's phenomenal. If he can get back to that, you're jumping up and down. If he gets anything close to that, at 2.2 this year, that's a steal. But here's where the air comes out of the balloon. Payamps ballooned to a 6.84 ERA this year. And the biggest thing is, the biggest concern, he was coming off an injury, so you don't know if he's going to bounce back. We're hoping for the best, hoping for the upside. But the other thing that jumped out, and it's one of the reasons why his ERA was so high, his strikeout rate fell from 25% the last 2 seasons to just 20%, and a barrel rate of 17.1%. And for those of y'all who don't follow that number, that's a big number. That's a big number. A barrel means that the ball's getting smoked. So when you think about it, once out of every 5 pitches essentially is getting drilled. That's what a barrel is. That means that the ball could have been caught, or it could have left the building, or somewhere in between. But it's getting ripped, and it's all about exit velocity, et cetera, et cetera. But a little interesting note about Payamps that a lot of y'all probably don't realize, he was a part of the trade that sent Sean Murphy to Atlanta in 2022 when Contreras headed to Milwaukee. Payamps was in Oakland A, and he came up the very next year, and away we go. Still like to have that trade back, man. If we still had Billy the Kid and Drake Baldwin, we would not even worry about going out and getting a DH, because you would just platoon those two guys and you'd be fine. Back and forth. Now, real quick, I do want to remind you, this coming Thursday, is that December 4th, I believe? December 4th. Yes. This coming Thursday, 6 p.m., we're doing another Once Upon a Pastime series, and we're going to make the case for and against the guys who are up for the Hall of Fame on the Veterans Committee. Okay? Why does that affect Braves fans? Dale Murphy is on that ballot. So that's going to get released the following Sunday. So we're going to do the show next Thursday, this coming Thursday, I could say. And then 3 days later, it's going to get announced. So we're going to lay out the pros and cons. And he is one of several, and there are some polarizing names on there, but we will go through all of them. And should be a fun night. 6 p.m. Thursday night. There we go. Qualifying offers, I don't believe we've been on since all this news broke down, but the guys that took the qualifying offers, Trent Grisham, Gleyber Torres, Brandon Woodruff, Shotei Imanaga. It's a $22.025 deal. It's a 1-year deal. They become free agents next year. And they will remain with their current clubs and then be able to hit free agency next year. That was the all-time high, by the way. No, we've never seen 4 accept the offer. That tells you the number's getting bigger, and it's going to be interesting on the next CBA next offseason, which is what I'm sure that's all we're going to be talking about next offseason, is the lockout/strike, unless we get some kind of miracle and they come to an agreement. But one of the things they'll be talking about is that CBA. Is the qualifying offer. And honestly, if you get that qualifying offer to the point where 4 guys are taking it, it's going to be less of an arguing point for the MLBPA to say we don't want this, because it has been a sticking point for a while. We don't want this. We don't want this. It's unfair. Nobody ever accepts it. And their argument is, and I'm going to name off the guys who got the qualifying offer and declined it. If you sign one of these guys, think of this: if you were a Braves fan, or if you're jumping in here and you're a fan of anybody, doesn't matter, because I know our group is growing with what we did during the postseason. So we have Blue Jays fans, we have Seattle Mariners fans, we have Dodgers fans, we have who were some of the other teams we did? Cleveland, Detroit. I see Boston fans in here. If you make a deal with one of these guys, if you go after one of these guys, you're going to have to give up the draft pick that goes along with it, and that can be a sticking point for a team. Now, if you land a huge deal for like a Kyle Tucker, who declined the offer from the Cubs, it's going to be such a big deal. The end of the first round pick is going to be an afterthought, because you're going to be like, man, we got our guy. I don't give a damn. It sucks that we're losing our draft pick, but at the same token, we just got Kyle Tucker, so let's go. I believe the same will be said about the Philadelphia designated hitter, Kyle Schwarber. I mean, the guy clocked, what did he clock, like 55, 56 home runs, whatever the hell it was? I think it was 56, because I believe Shohei fell right below him at 55. Same thing. Dylan Cease obviously wasn't a big deal to Toronto, because they said, you know what, the next 7 years, we've got our guy, so what the hell does it matter? It's going to be the other guys, and there's a few other guys that go out there, and it's not that they're not going to get signed. It's going to play into whether or not you want to give up a pick and give X amount of dollars. So it's going to drive their money down, which is not what the player wants, and you can understand their pushback of, why the hell do I have to take less money because my team that wants to sign me is giving up a pick? I mean, I think the easy answer is, if you want to get rid of all this nonsense, allow MLB to have a salary cap, but demand you have a salary floor. And if we ever get a salary cap, you got to have a salary floor, because that's the only way it guarantees these free agents that they're not going to get screwed in the long run. And I've been saying this for years, that they need to have it for Major League Baseball. They've got to get a salary cap to make all these teams more competitive. But you got to give the other side, you got to give them a salary floor. Because what you can't do is go out and say, all right, we want to control how much money everybody spends on going over, but we're fine with the also-rans of the leagues. Like the Pittsburgh Pirates are going to go out there and spend not even a quarter of what's expected for the salary cap. Because if my guess is today, if you get a salary cap today, it would be $250 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. Maybe it pushes to $275, and then the salary floor. I think it's fair to ask all these teams to spend somewhere, maybe not 200, but somewhere just south of that. And what it means is that a guy like, we'll just take Dylan Cease for example, because he just signed. Maybe he doesn't get signed by the Blue Jays, but he gets that same amount of money to be signed by the Kansas City Royals or whoever the hell you want to insert. So that's my biggest thing. But the the free agents that are out there. So when you hear these names, remember there is a pick that goes along with the signing. And so if your team's not buying them, it may be because their farm system is getting depleted. Maybe there's a couple of guys that they're really interested in this coming draft, and they're like, man, I don't want to lose my draft pick because of this. And it really screws the idea. Okay, for instance, you think about a team who had a bad year last year. They're not really in on these free agents because a team that had a bad season like the Braves, like the Baltimore Orioles, they're expected to have a high draft pick. And so the whole thing gets pushed together, but I still believe a couple of names, if you get these guys, you don't care. You're like, whatever, dude. That guy probably wasn't going to play for the next 6 years anyways. We've now got Bo Bichette at shortstop. It's that kind of thing. So it's Kyle Tucker. It's Kyle Schwarber. Anybody named Kyle, you're going to lose a draft pick. And then Bo Bichette. I still think there's a good market for Framber Valdez. I prefer Ranger Suarez, but I can understand why there is some tentativeness from some of these GMs because he hasn't proved it. He hasn't done it long enough. But that kid's filthy. And if the Braves get out of Ranger Suarez, biggest news is we don't have to face him. And the Braves have never hit Ranger Suarez. If you can't beat him, force him to join you. And then other names that are really interesting, Edwin Diaz. I think there's a pretty good chance he ends up back at the Mets. But he opted for free agency. Maybe he doesn't like New York, but I don't know why he wouldn't because they adore him and they got the trumpets and all that. And then these are the guys. You got Zach Gallen and you've got Michael King. Those are the last two names on the list. In my opinion, Michael King greater than Zach Gallen. But they have him ranked flip-flop because of the upside of Gallen and what he's done in years past. But he always seems to run out of gas at the end. What I love about Michael King is that come postseason, if you don't want him to be one of the guys that starts the game, which nothing really shows where you wouldn't, but let's say you've got some guys who are really clicking. Michael King has plenty of experience coming out of the bullpen, and he can be a guy that comes in, and he could be a guy that could almost be the MVP of a series because he could come in 2 or 3 games and spell 2 innings plus in any scenario, whether it's a game that you're starting to fall behind in the 4th inning. I'm talking about postseason. You're falling behind the 4th inning, like, all right, we got to go get the ball. Let's get him. Let's get him the hell out of there. Schwellenbach doesn't have it today, right? King can bridge you to the 6th, 7th inning and giving your offense a chance to get there. And that's for any team. So I really like those players, and those are the qualifying offers that we're seeing. Let me see if we got any questions and comments right now as we check over here real quick and see if anybody's chimed in. I don't see anything particular, but I'm going to expand my screen here so I can see more of these comments. And so if you got anything that you want to mention, go ahead and fire away. I'm going to move it over to where I can see it much better as I go through the other nights. Gary says that they let him get they let him slip through his fingers talking about Sonny Gray. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, Gary. I'm not necessarily believing that. I believe it was Sonny Gray, you said. Or did you say Cease or Gray? Yeah, Sonny Gray. At the number, that's the problem. I like Sonny Gray, but the guy was going to be paid $40 million this year, and then it's a 1-year deal. So you'd have to give up some good prospects. It's a 1-year deal because he has a club option that can be canceled at $5 million. So here's the deal. Sonny Gray is set to make $35 million this year. The second year, it's right around that same number, 30 maybe, but I believe it was closer to 35 because the entire contract was backloaded. No one's going to pay him $35 million in 2000, especially with everything that's going on with the strike and everything. So when you bring in Sonny Gray, it's essentially a $40 million deal because you're going to have to pay the 35 this year and $5 million next year to void the contract. The Cardinals were willing to pay $20 million of that. So that tells you that the Cardinals believe that he's on the back end. I do like Sonny Gray, and at that number, I don't hate it. But they also had to give up some prospects to go along with that, and that altered some things. So if everything's being even, and we don't give away a ton of prospects that are very close, because that's what St. Louis is looking for. They're looking for prospects that are very close to contributing, if not on opening day this year, then maybe by the end of this season, the very latest 2027. If you do that, and you have to pay $20 million, or you get the $20 million discount, you're normally going to have to give away pretty good prospects. You think of all these pitchers we go over, they would have wanted one of those guys like Owen Murphy and whatnot, right? I don't know if I want to give that up on a one-year deal to Sonny Gray. But if you could have gotten them to pay, even if it wasn't the full 20, let's say if you could have gotten them to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of 10, and we give up the more depth type of prospects as opposed to guys that could be in the league contributing in the near future, then you can talk me into it. See if there's anything else. Pirates 2025 payroll. This is John, I believe. Unfortunately, I don't know what is going on. Like, why did YouTube all of a sudden take away the names? Is there something that y'all have to go in and do, or something we have to go in and do? I hate that I don't know your monikers, but I'm starting to recognize some of them. I don't know who Rich 22. Oh, that's O'Brien, I believe. Maybe it's not Brian because he's saying "Go Dogs," and I thought Brian was all about Alabama. I know Charlie's and I know Gary's because it's actually in their name, and I know John. John, I remember you bringing up the whole chop shop. I recognize yours. Some of the avatars I recognize, and some of them I don't. Okay, Rich is Brian. Okay, so, but when it comes down to things like Sonny Gray, when I saw it, I had two thoughts. A, I think it's a good deal for the Red Sox because they have a ton of depth in their farm system, and they desperately needed a guy who could be a 3. He's a solid 3 with the ceiling of a 2 come October. Meaning, I don't think Sonny Gray is necessarily a top 2 guy in the rotation on most rotations all year long. But when you get to October and you need a veteran to go out there and shove and give you 5-6 strong innings, Sonny Gray's not a terrible option. We've seen it in the past. He normally hasn't gotten a lot of run support because remember he was pitching with the freaking Twins in that series a couple of years ago where they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. And the way I look at it, good move for the Red Sox. I got a buddy who you've seen him on this show before. And I can't get into details, obviously. But what I'm going to tell you is that our Red Sox friend that has been on the show, he's actually been on pretty recently. He that was one of his guys, or two of his guys. If you've been watching the news, and I won't go into details because I don't feel like I'm the person to deliver it, but that was two of his guys that were well, a guy and a gal that were assaulted in Washington D.C. He was there. He was happened to have the day off, and he's fine. But you can imagine mentally they're not doing well. But before this took place, we were talking about the trade. And he wasn't big on it, but he's also a guy that only pays attention to the Red Sox. And what he remembers from Sonny Gray is him not pitching that well against Boston when he was in New York. But Sonny Gray's a good starting pitcher. Yeah, John. It floored me because when I saw the news, I was not watching the news that day because I was cleaning. We host Thanksgiving. So I was cleaning, straightening up, doing all that kinds of stuff, and then doing some stuff in the office. I didn't have the news on. Normally I have the news on in the background in case something happens. But I just didn't have it on. I was listening to a couple of podcasts on YouTube and just didn't have it on. My wife comes home and says, "Did you hear the news?" I go, "What news?" She tells me, but it was kind of jumbled up because she had just seen it in passing on Facebook. And I put the two and two together. I was like, "That's in D.C.?" And she goes, "Yeah." I was like, "That's this is a National Guard?" She goes, "Yeah." And I said, "The Sarge is there. He just got sent there like 2 weeks ago." So you can imagine we were flipping out and trying to figure out if he's okay. We found out that he's okay, but unfortunately, the other two are not. One is passed, and I believe the other one is fighting for his life. That's the last thing I saw this morning before I took the dogs for a walk. But anyways, I won't stay on that because, once again, I'm not in the know. I don't know anything. I'm just letting you know that he's okay because you've seen him on the show. He is in the National Guard, and hopefully everything is going to turn out okay for them. But I can just imagine what they're going through. As I try to transition back to baseball, guys that are out there on the free agent market, and these are guys, and these are the ranking systems that they've come up with. And I'm just going to tell you where I think they end up at, because we might run out of time here, because I got to stop this by the top of the hour because some of the stations that are carrying us are going to football coverage, and fair enough. By the way, Brian, go Yellow Jackets. Why the hell are you going go Bulldogs, man? Why are you pulling for the Bulldogs? It doesn't make any sense. You're an Alabama fan. The more teams that lose in front of you, the better off you are. And if Alabama wins, by the way, Brian, they're going. Don't worry. I know it feels like three teams are fighting for two spots: Alabama, Miami, and Notre Dame. I feel like Notre Dame and Alabama win and you're in. Miami's going to be the odd person left out. Unless a ton of crap happens. They need like 5 different scenarios for them to get into the playoffs. And then Miami can control that. And at the top of the hour, if we got a little time, we may keep the cast going for a second. I've actually got a breakdown of all the things that are going on for the college football, so we'll transition out. We'll keep it on the same stream. I'll just need a minute to get everything together. We might go ahead and do that. That's the stupidest thing that I've ever heard in my life. I pull for the SEC. First of all, quit treating it like a participation trophy league, okay? It's not you SEC fans with the participation trophies. Just because you're in a conference doesn't make you good. It's the stupidest thing. I used to tell Tennessee fans that all the time when I lived up there, like, quit pulling for Kentucky basketball. It's screwing you because they live right down the road and they're taking all your damn recruits. Anyways, the participation league that is known as the SEC. There's something else that I always say. I'll save it for the top of the hour. That always gets the goat of the participation trophy league. I mean, ask John, who's a Buffalo Bills fan. You sit around and pull for the damn Dolphins and Jets, Patriots. Get the hell out of here. Alex Bregman. He is the number 2 guy on the free agent market right after Kyle Tucker. We've already mentioned Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker has a QO. I'm going to try to get the rest of this baseball talk in the next 13 minutes, and then we'll transition back to football. And I just like giving Brian a hard time anyways. If someone's not giving Brian a hard time, I just don't think he's being challenged enough. Kyle Tucker, 28 years old, number 1 guy on the list, but once again, he does have a qualifying offer. They were projecting, by the way, the other day, and I could not believe it was still up this high. They were still talking about $400 million for Kyle Tucker. I thought with the terrible season he had comparatively on what he's done, that he would drop quite a bit. And most people are contributing it to be playing in Wrigley, but his offense was awful in July and August when it's warm in Wrigley and the ball's flying out. So you can't blame that on the weather. I would not be surprised if Kyle Tucker ends up getting a modest deal with a 1-year opt-out. And probably a 2nd-year opt-out if he wants it, because they might want to read the tea leaves on what's going on in free agency. He would still go back to the free agent market after 27 and would be going into that year at 30 years old, and away you go. So I don't know if Kyle Tucker is going to get that $400 million plus deal. If he does, good for him. But I would not want to spend that if I was a club looking for free agency. Alex Bregman, 32 years old. He signed a 3-year, $120 deal with the opt-out. He did opt out. My belief is Alex Bregman comes back to the Red Sox. My belief is on Kyle Tucker. He's going anywhere but the Cubs because they're all blaming it on Wrigley Field, which is about the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. We're going to blame Wrigley Field in July and August when the wind's blowing out and it's hot. And no, that's why I couldn't hit in those. Sammy Sosa broke all kinds of records, and I know it was steroids, but he was still slapping the hell out of the ball. When I think of Wrigley Field, I think of baseball in July and August and the wind blowing out. When I think of like actual Cubs baseball, that's what I think of. A day game, wind blowing out, let's go. The final score is 11-9. Maybe that's because my only game I ever went to at Wrigley Field, it was Marlins Cubs, and it was a high scoring game like that in the middle of the day. We were in, I think it was early August, and the wind was blowing out. Anyways, they are talking about with Kyle Tucker, Cubs, Dodgers, Giants. I'm going to cross the Cubs off the list. Unless he just absolutely loved Chicago, I don't buy it. I don't put it past the San Francisco Giants to grab Kyle Tucker. That's something that if they could get a guy, and remember, they have spent so much money in the past trying to lure these guys, these big free agents. Ohtani comes to mind. Aaron Judge comes to mind. And they always get left at the altar. They're always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Kyle Tucker could be their bride. I know they went out and got Adames last year, but Adames, they overpaid for a guy that's a good, very good shortstop, but he wasn't worth what they paid him. Kyle Tucker, if they can talk him into it, the problem is getting someone to agree to go to San Francisco and put the politics aside. The cost of living is through the roof there. And I won't get into all the reasons why, but the cost of living is through the roof there. And so that's one of the reasons why most guys that want to sign in San Francisco want more money than most. Bo Bichette is out there. He's the number 4. Did I skip? Oh, I'm sorry. Kyle Tucker. Kyle Schwarber is the number 3 guy. The rumors are Phillies, Rangers, and Reds. Man, first of all, I still say Braves, you need to keep your hand up because until he says no, you need to try to do everything you can to bring him in. If Kyle Schwarber becomes your designated hitter, and it sucks you that we'd lose the first-round pick, but if Kyle Schwarber becomes your designated hitter, You can live with Mauricio Dubon as your shortstop because you're going to get offensive production. And Dubon is not such a light-hitting short. He's not a Nick Allen. He's going to do fine. But you no longer are looking for, man, we could have Bo Bichette at short. Now you're like, Dubon will be fine. You'll probably still add another veteran to back up Dubon in case of injury and maybe lefty-righty type of situation. But they have Phillies, Reds, Rangers. I almost wonder if that's why the Rangers moved off of Simeon. Because if you're signing Schwarber, you need to save money where you can. The Reds one to me is incredibly interesting because they don't spend, and yet they're saying that that's one of the teams they like for him to end up at. I just don't buy it. They haven't spent like that. But can you imagine Kyle Schwarber slamming the ball in that stadium? I mean, Kyle Tucker too, for that matter. But once again, you can get it cheaper with Schwarber because of his age and because he's a designated hitter and you're not paying for the 5 tools. Bo Bichette is the number 4 guy on the list, and they do have the Braves mentioned as it's Blue Jays, Braves, and Tigers. I don't think the Blue Jays signing Cease kills that idea. I just wonder if it affects it in any way. Braves and Tigers are interesting for them to mention them because the Tigers have been aggressive in free agency in years past. But then what the hell are you doing with Baez? I guess are you putting him back out at center field again? And then you could always slide. The one thing that they have, just like the Braves would have if you sign Bo Bichette, is that in key games, you don't have to do this in May. You don't have to do this on a Tuesday night in April. But in key games, especially in October, if you have spent a lot of money on Bo Bichette, he's obviously your starting shortstop, but you get a lead in the 8th, 9th inning, here comes Mauricio Dubon. And so you love the flexibility for that, and the Tigers, for that matter, can still put Baez at that. Baez still has a glove. You just never know what the hell to expect from his bat from time to time. Cody Bellinger is the number 5 guy, and he is rumored Mets, Tigers. I think the Yankees are going to do everything that they can do to bring him back. It's interesting that the Tigers are on these conversations with all these guys, because you don't think of them as being a big spender. And what else do we have here? We have Pete Alonso. This one's interesting to me. Giants, Mets, Red Sox. I do think the Giants are getting one of these top 6 picks. I just don't believe that if Pete Alonso gets signed by the Red Sox, the Giants, even possibly the Mets, although I believe the Mets are saying goodbye to him, he's a designated hitter. And I feel like you have to pay him as such. He's so bad at first base. I mean, hell, he's the reason why Kodai Senga went on the IL, because he couldn't make a simple toss to first, and he blew out his hamstring leaping for the ball trying to get the relay from Pete. But if you bring him in as a designated hitter, I like Pete Alonso in a lot of these scenarios. I don't know if I love him in San Francisco because that's a tough park for right-handers to deal with. But he definitely gives you offense. I think Kyle Tucker is much more important for the Giants because not only does he give you the offense, but Kyle Tucker also can play very, very good glove out there in right field, and that is an absolute Grand Canyon that they had to chase down the line. So I like all. I can understand the arguments, Giants, Mets, and Red Sox, but all 3 scenarios I see him as a DH, and the Mets can't really sign Alonso to a long-term deal knowing he's going to be a DH, because Juan Soto is going to be your DH in a few years because you overpaid for that knob. And though he's a good hitter and a very good base runner, he sucks in the outfield. And it's only going to get worse as he ages. Dylan Cease is already gone. Munetaka Murakami. I bet you I end up butchering that throughout the offseason. But Munetaka Murakami is the number 8 guy on the list. He plays first. He plays third. So immediately I take him out of any kind of situation with the Braves. He's 26 years old. He's being posted by the Japanese League. They've got Dodgers, Mariners, and Yankees. Is anybody but the Dodgers going to sign him? Because it seems like they're all going into L.A., and they're all willing, or at least Shohei was willing to hide money on the back end because he didn't want to spend it all on the horses, or soccer, or whatever the hell they were gambling on. But it seems like, I believe the reason why they're saying Mariners and Yankees is because you had Ichiro with the Mariners and Godzilla and the Frog both played with the Yankees. But looking at it also from the big picture, Yankees could really use a corner infielder like that. And the Dodgers did bring back Max Muncy. So what do you do with Max Muncy if you end up signing this kid to play third base? Because obviously Freddie Freeman's their first baseman. This kid's 26 years old. Are you going to try to move Muncy? Because Muncy's not a third baseman anymore. He just keeps getting forced in there. And the Dodgers roster is so good he plays third. He can play third base because he can kick the ball around 2 or 3 times a game, and they'll still score enough runs to win. Michael King is the number 9 guy. They're saying Blue Jays, Padres, Yankees. Keep an eye on the Braves. The Braves are going to go after someone like this. Someone who is a veteran that they can rely on. And the number 10 guy that rounds it out is Blue Jays, Giants, Phillies, Ranger Suarez. I think the Phillies are damn idiots if they let him walk. Blue Jays, I don't believe this would put him in the mix anymore because of the signing of Cease. That's very unlikely. So then you go Giants, Phillies, and I still say the Braves, they've been mentioned in the past with him. He's 30 years old. He's not going to command a huge deal like Max Fried because he does not have the track record. But you could get a steal on this kid. We're at the top of the hour, so we'll say goodbye to folks in Radio Land. Those that want to stick with us, we will finish up with some football talk here in a second. I'm going to wind out a couple of guys here. You've got another kid, and this one is interesting. Right-handed pitcher, Tatsuya Amai. I might be butchering that, but that's how I've heard it pronounced so far, so I'll adjust as I hear it. But Tatsuya Amai. He is a right-handed starting pitcher. He's 28 years old. He's fresh off a season where he posted a 1.92 ERA and 163 innings with the Cebu Lions. And the only thing that makes me pause, 5'11", 154 pounds. Man, that's tiny. And you're going to ask him to go out there. What he threw? He threw 163 innings, and they only pitch once a week. So you could maybe see him going out there and getting close to 200 innings. But is that going to wear him down? And he is 28, so he's not a spring chicken, but he's still pretty young. how long of a deal is he expecting? So would I love for the Braves to go in on this thing? Sure. But they never seem to be in on any of the international big splashes. They do well with drafting drafted the younger kids down in Central America and developing them at the early ages and turning like the Ronald Acuna Juniors and whatnot into great prospects. But you never see the Braves. The Braves have never signed a kid out of Japan. And if we've got to put money up to sign one guy from overseas, where he started his career overseas, I want Ha-Seong Kim. Because he gives you so many things that you can do if you sign him. If you have Ha-Seong Kim at short for the Braves, you then can kind of name what Dubon does from day to day. He can literally becomes what I've always adored. Back to the days of Jose Oquendo of the St. Louis Cardinals, the guy who is a true utility player that can move all around the field and give other guys days off. That's what I want Dubon to be. I don't realistically want him as our starting shortstop, because if you can have Kim at the starting shortstop, you've really done something there. Edwin Diaz, by the way, he's being rumored for Yankees, Orioles, Mets. I think the Yankees get him. I really do. I think they're going to try to fix that bullpen. Framber Valdez, now this is interesting because they just moved Sonny Gray. Cardinals, Blue Jays, Astros. You can eliminate the Blue Jays, and going back to the Astros is a real thing, but are the Cardinals now in on them because they saved a little money? So are they not getting younger? They're just wanting to pivot from Gray to get a longer-term deal on a guy who's proven in October. Eugenio Suarez, I think he stays with the Mariners. They've talked about Angels and the Pirates. What? The Mariners are going to outbid them. Josh Naylor, he was signed with the Mariners, 5-year, $92 million deal. I think they're going to try to keep those two guys together. And let me see. Trent Grisham, he accepted the 1-year qualifying offer, so he's staying with the Yankees. The Yankees wanted him to leave, but I think there was going to be a problem there, and Grisham knew it. Nobody was going to sign him to that kind of deal per year. So he's grabbing the 1-year deal, and if he can have another good season, then he can hit free agency at that point. Luis Arias, you got the Angels, Giants, and Rangers. I think he's a perfect fit for San Francisco. But the Rangers are interesting because though he played first base this year, he can play second base. And we'll wind this up with Zach Gallen, Diamondbacks, Mets, Astros. If the Astros don't get Valdez, they'll probably pivot to Gallen. I don't think the Mets are going to be that interested in Gallen. They got some good young pitching there. Unless they take a couple of those young pitchers and move them to get one of the studs out there like a Turek Schoolball, and then they sign Gallen to be lower in the rotation. I don't think the Mets have to make this move. And honestly, if I'm the Mets, I don't move these guys that they're talking about moving. Remember at the beginning of the year, not the beginning of the year, the end of the year, the Mets had these 3 stud young pitchers come up, and they all pitched very well. And that's who kept the Mets in it and almost got them into October. Why would you trade these guys away when you have such a much longer grasp on, if you keep these guys around the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you can really build something as opposed to try to run a player. All right, let's go ahead and transition over to football. We're going to do this real quick. I got to pull up my notes. So we'll go ahead and play this real quick clip, and then we'll jump into the football. All the scenarios you may be wondering about: who needs to win and who doesn't need to win, who I need to pull for, who I pull against. Guys like Brian who are confused. Hey, baseball fans. Mac McGee here for the BCR. Make sure to subscribe and become a member today. All offseason, we have a jam-packed schedule to keep you entertained and informed during the MLB offseason. Weekly shows like MLB Today, and for you country club members, Braves Country Today, going over the world of baseball, how it affects all teams, including the Atlanta Braves. Once Upon a Pastime series, Thursday nights, we'll take a deep dive on the history of this great game. And on Friday nights, Braves Country Theater, we're going to turn back the clock and bring you historic games from the past. We'll bring you a game from yesteryear. That's Braves Country Radio, the BCR. Coming this spring, a jam-packed loaded spring training schedule, wall-to-wall coverage of Major League Baseball. Pitch-by-pitch, play-by-play, the Atlanta Braves, and our out-of-town doubleheaders. American League, National League, we'll see you there for the classic call of the great game of baseball. Welcome back as we make our move towards college football. We got games kicking off at noon, so I want to go ahead and do this real quick, mainly because we didn't do an armchair show this week because I was trying to give the guys the day off. And with that being said, I want to go ahead and dive into this real quick. We won't keep you long on this. Just want to give you basically scenarios that are going on with the college football playoffs and also with the conference championships, which leads to the college football playoffs. So we'll do this real quick. Let's start off with the ACC. If you're wondering who should I pull for, who should I not pull for, Virginia, win and you're in. That's the simplest format. Or if SMU loses to Cal, NC State loses to UNC, and Pittsburgh loses to Miami. But if they win, they're in. SMU, win, and you're in. If not, they need help. I won't go through all those the teams that win and you're in, we're just going to leave it at that. Pittsburgh, they need to win, and either SMU or Virginia Tech loses. Now, they're playing Miami, okay? So Pittsburgh, they need to win. SMU has to lose, or Virginia has to lose. Pittsburgh, playing Miami. Miami win, and Virginia Tech beats. Hold on. Let me restart that. Miami needs to win, and one of these two things have to happen, and it has to happen in this scenario. In no other way. Virginia Tech wins, and Wake Forest or NC State wins. Okay, if you're following me. Or if Cal wins, then you're going to end up with Wake Forest needing to win and NC State win. So for Miami to get in, they either get a win and Virginia Tech and NC State, or in Virginia Tech win, which means Virginia losses, and then they need either Wake Forest or NC State to win. The other scenario is they win, Cal, Wake, and NC State all have to win. Okay? So, bit of a nightmare. Miami needs a lot of things to go their way, essentially. If Duke wins and Miami wins over Pittsburgh, and either Cal or SMU or UNC over NC State, and then they also need Virginia Tech to beat Virginia. Duke needs a damn miracle. Duke basically, hey, good morning, Reddy. Good to see you. See if anybody else has jumped in here. Why does Ready70, why does it show his name, but everybody else's doesn't? Unless that's just his email. All right. Georgia Tech. Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech and a hell of an engineer. They need all this to happen. Cal over SMU. Georgia Tech doesn't have to win today because it's not a conference game. So keep that. If Georgia Tech, if they win and then get into the ACC championship, they increase their odds of getting into the playoffs. They lose today, it's over anyways. But they will be going to a pretty good bowl game. Georgia Tech needs Cal to beat SMU and Virginia Tech over Virginia. And then they either need Wake Forest to beat Duke or Miami to beat Pittsburgh. They don't need them both, but they need to have one of them. So basically the two front runners, SMU and Virginia, have got to lose. And then if Wake Forest, what time is that game? Tomorrow, 3:30. If Wake Forest goes into Duke and beats Duke, and it's essentially a pick 'em, it can happen, then they're in business. And I won't get into the odds, but the odds of these teams making it and going up against each other, SMU Virginia has the most likelihood. The second most likelihood is Georgia Tech Pittsburgh, along with Pitt SMU, Pitt Virginia. And then it dials off a little bit. Miami versus SMU, Miami versus Virginia. But a lot of that has to go with the point spreads of what's going into the game. So how are you to change yours? Ready? That's what I'm confused by. How come the others can't change it? Or did you just change your email? Is this a permanent thing with YouTube? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What the hell are they doing to people? Why can't you come up with your own nickname? It's stupid. I mean, I understand if they do like some of these, like Facebook and some of the others, where they say if you change your nickname, you can't change it again for X amount of weeks or whatever. But good Lord, what are they doing? All right, let's go to the Southeastern Conference. I think that's the one that everybody is wanting to chime in about. This one's a little sticky too. But if Alabama wins tomorrow, Alabama is heading to the SEC championship game. Win and they're in. Texas A&M beat Texas, or Ole Miss and Alabama both lose. So Texas A&M, in all likelihood, if they lose to Texas, somehow they're in trouble. It doesn't make any sense because Texas A&M is undefeated and they'd only have one loss. You would think that would, but they're going to need help. Georgia, they need. It doesn't matter what Georgia does today because it's an out-of-conference game. They need either Alabama or Texas A&M to lose. If either one of those teams lose, Georgia goes to the SEC title game. Ole Miss, they got to win the Egg Bowl today, and Alabama and Texas A&M have to lose. Which I think in that scenario would put them up against Georgia for the SEC title game, if I've got that right. You see if we've got any others. These are just percentages. Those are just, so those are the main scenarios I just gave you. Alabama win the Iron Bowl, boom. Your ticket is punched. You're heading to Atlanta. Texas A&M beat Texas, boom. Let's go. It's going to be Texas A&M versus Alabama. What a fun SEC title game that'll be. If that doesn't happen, Georgia gets in if Alabama or Texas A&M lose. So Bulldog fans, you are big War Eagle, and the first one's tonight. Texas A&M, Texas. You're a big Longhorn fan tonight. And then Ole Miss, you get in if you win the Egg Bowl, and you need both Alabama and Texas A&M to lose. Not just one or the other. You need them both. Big Ten. The Big Ten scenario has, I believe they're already pretty much, I believe we've already got it, right? Isn't it Ohio State and Indiana? They've got some scenarios set up, but that's the all likelihood of what we're going to get. There are some kooky duke things that could happen, but essentially Indiana and Ohio State are both undefeated. You can make the argument, if you're one of those teams, that you're almost better off not going to the Big Ten championship because you're going to get in. If Indiana and Ohio State or either one of them lose, they're heading to the postseason. I mean, you're just not going to get there without it. When does Indiana play? They play tonight against Purdue and Ohio State at noon tomorrow. So that's the most likely scenarios. And Oregon has an outside chance, but they need some help. The Big 12 title game, Texas Tech is in with a win, or Arizona State loss, or BYU and Kansas loss. BYU clinches a berth with a win, or so in all likelihood we get Texas Tech and BYU, which I'd really like to see a rematch of that because I felt like BYU got caught flat-footed. It was a road game and they just didn't play a very good game. It was an early kickoff. I'd like to see a rematch of that and see which one is better. I think they both deserve to be in the postseason, by the way, but this committee doesn't know what the hell they're doing. Texas Tech wins and they're in. BYU wins and they're in. If they lose, the Red Raiders need an Arizona State loss or a BYU or Kansas loss, which Texas Tech plays tomorrow at noon and BYU plays BYU's done with, well, no, their UCF is a conference game. It's so weird. Central Florida and Brigham Young are in the same conference. They should roll UCF. There shouldn't be any issue there. Texas Tech should roll West Virginia, but man, I'm telling you, there's an outside chance that that Morgantown's a tricky place, especially when it's supposed to be like 37 degrees and pretty good wind. And for Florida State to get into the championship game ready, we have to have 14 plane crashes. All right. What else do we have here? The scenarios for Utah is Utah wins, Arizona loss, UCF loss, and a Texas Tech loss. They all three have to happen. Arizona State somehow gets in if they win, BYU and Kansas lose. They also have another scenario where BYU, with all these scenarios, Arizona State has to win. A BYU loss and a Texas Tech loss, or a Utah loss and a Texas Tech loss. And I believe as far as probability, yeah, that's it. Any of these teams that are needing to win and get a loss, like in Arizona State, it all gets eliminated if the two front runners win. So there you have it. I hope I gave y'all some clarity on that. Some of the picks that I like today, I'll go over that real quick with you. I already told you I like the over in the Georgia Tech game. I liked the over. It's gone up a little bit. I grabbed it at a much lower number. I liked the over in the Egg Bowl. I got it at 59.5. It's already up to 62.5. and Mississippi is now just a 6.5 point favorite. They were a 7.5. I got it at an 8 point favorite earlier in the week, but same game parlay type of thing. If you could push Mississippi State up to double digits, and you can get the over well under 60, and you still get a 1-for-1 on a same game parlay. Same thing with Georgia Tech and Georgia. If I was going to put money on this, honestly, I would probably take Georgia Tech in the points, but I like the over much more than I like anything else. But it's interesting. You could get Georgia Tech. You could push it up on a teaser to get Georgia Tech up now. I'm showing it now at 15.5. That has jumped 2 points. 15.5. You could get that to a 3-touchdown plus same game parlay and get the over under just over 50. I don't think this is going to be a low scoring game. And you're not even getting the, oh, well, but it's right off a holiday. It's a 3:30 kickoff, man. That's a perfect kickoff. You're not, I don't expect for the offenses to be stagnant, was what I'm trying to say. Sometimes I worry about that on early kickoffs, especially coming off of a holiday. I'm not worried about that in the Georgia Tech game. And tonight's game, I liked Texas A&M. They were a pick'em a couple of days ago. It's now 2.5. You can still get it under the key number, but tread lightly on that one because that game feels like a game that could come down to a 2-point conversion. Ready? I'll have to play that sometime. We actually did a Once Upon a Pastime series, and we ranked the all-time college football rivalries. The number one college football rivalry in all the land is the one we're doing on December 13th. It's Army-Navy, and it's not particularly close. It really isn't. But if you want to go with the argument of what are the best 3 rivalries this weekend, because I feel like the rivalry has to be played on this weekend for it to be a top rivalry, excluding Army-Navy because they get their own weekend for obvious reasons. You got to put Ohio State-Michigan in there. I know a lot of people aren't Big Ten fans, but you got to put it in there. The Iron Bowl, to me, is top 5. It's not top 3, and the reason being is that it's only become first of all, they took 41 years off. That hurts them a lot. But the other thing is the Iron Bowl has tended to be one of these. You do get a couple of the crazy close games like the kick 6 and the 4th and 31. But most of these Iron Bowl games, Alabama has dominated the series, and Auburn is so up and down that a lot of times these games aren't competitive. I kind of like what I expect tomorrow. I don't think Auburn's going to be very competitive. I've got to put Florida State, Florida in the top 3 nationally because until recent memory, these two teams were powerhouses for 30 years, and the winner of that rivalry usually was punching their ticket, if not to the college football playoff, BCS, whatever the hell you want to call it. They were still, they decided who went. So in other words, there would be a top 2 or 3 team like a Florida State or Florida, and other teams are pulling against whoever was ranked up there because they're trying to get their team in. There's still like a hate relationship. Any rivalry where state law says you have to meet on the field has got to be top 3 for me. Oh, tons of people watch Army-Navy. Ready? That's a bad job if you don't watch Army-Navy. That is the college football rivalry, and there's so much history. We'll go over it when we do the Army-Navy, but there's a reason why it's called America's game. So, but to me, if they had not taken such a long hiatus, I love the Texas A&M Texas rivalry. I really do. But they've taken a long hiatus. So we got to put them on the back burner. Clemson, South Carolina, to me, is one that goes under the radar. Nobody really pays attention. There's a hate in that rivalry. I always try to tune in for that. And pay attention tonight, because usually there's riots at the bonfires tonight. As far as like I said, Auburn going up and down for a while. Remember, for a while there, before Nick Saban cleaned it up, Alabama was terrible. So that's the problem with that rivalry, is that they've been non-factors too many years. But as far as rivalries that you may not know enough about, maybe I'll play some of those if we end up with rain delays and whatnot next season. But there are rivalries that you don't realize are as good as they are because you don't understand the history of it. And until you dive into it, and I'll tell you another good rivalry and it's non-consequential, but it has a little bit of a interest this year. Virginia Tech, Virginia. The Auburn-Georgia rivalry is one of the better rivalries. Problem is, it's not played on the last weekend. If it's not played at the end of the year, I can't put it in to any kind of a top 5. Same thing with Notre Dame USC. I think Notre Dame USC is one of the best rivalries of college football, but they always play in the middle of the schedule. Same thing with Florida Georgia. I'll tell you what would be a fun rivalry if they would play every year would be Alabama Georgia. But you don't get that every year. It just depends on where it falls. But to me, if you're going to put these up for the ones that are on this weekend, I could be talked into Alabama, Auburn being in the top 3. I just feel like they're more of a top 4. And as far as some of the ones, I love the Iowa, Nebraska, but I know it has no real consequence. Ohio State, Michigan, it's got to be up there. UCLA, USC is a fun one. But how often is USC very good? Oregon, Washington is going to be a better one as the years go on because they no longer play the Apple Cup this weekend. It's going to start being Oregon and Washington because they're both in the Big Ten. So that's basically, if I was going to put a third one right now with Army, Navy, Florida State, Florida, it'd probably be Alabama, Auburn. But right there, Ohio State, Michigan, and then number 4, Alabama, Auburn is what I was trying to say. But right there is Texas A&M, Texas. Texas A&M, Texas is a great rivalry, but they took a huge hiatus when they weren't in the same conference. We're about to get out of here, so y'all get ready for kickoff. It was fun talking with y'all. We'll be back next week. Let me see. What's he saying? Braves need AS as they need him now. I'm thinking Gary's saying Braves need a shortstop is what I'm thinking. The AAS is more of a shortstop is what Gary was saying. I'm not 100% what that meant. See if anybody else has any more comments. I think that was about it. Yeah, ready? I think you'll enjoy Army Navy. You need to tune in this year. We carry the game, but you can obviously sync it along with the video because it all comes on CBS. But we carry the game for the men and women who are all over the world, and especially considering what just happened 2 days ago, it's going to be fresh on our minds that anybody stationed anywhere is in harm's way. But we carry it because there's a lot of young men and women all around the world can't get access to the broadcast by normal like radio and whatnot, but they can get internet. And if they can get internet, they can get YouTube, and we can bring them the game. So we always have a really good turnout, and I always look forward to that. And always try to bring some nuggets of the history of that rivalry to it. And if I get time, maybe I can put together some of the other rivalries, and we can do some cross comparing of it. But we're going to get it out of your way. Good luck to you today. If your team is playing, you got a lot of good games the Egg Bowl. If you're saying, what do I watch the next 9-10 hours? You're watching the Egg Bowl at noon. Though if you got a secondary device, I'm telling you right now, you want to see some hard-hitting cold weather football, give me Iowa, Nebraska. You at 3 o'clock or the 3:30 window is what I should say. You're watching Georgia Tech. And if you're looking for a secondary game in that window, you do have the NFL game at 3 o'clock today, by the way, but I could care less about that. The 3 o'clock window, games of interest. In the ACC, they need too much stuff to happen, Wake Forest Duke, so I'm not going to give you that one. And in the Big Ten, you have Oregon at Washington. That's an interesting one. That would be my number 2 pick, because if Oregon loses, they're not guaranteed to get it into the college football playoffs. So if you're trying to get one of your teams in, that's what you want to do. And then tonight, Texas A&M and Texas, and that's the only SEC game tonight, by the way. And you go back up to the ACC. What time is that game kicking off? Is it a night? No, never mind. That's tomorrow. For some reason, I thought Miami-Pittsburgh was tonight, but that's actually tomorrow. But the other games that you've got going on, if you just want to go from a top 25 perspective, you do have a fun one that no one pays attention to, and it starts a little later than A&M and Texas. It's going to be on Fox, so you can get it on rabbit ears. Arizona State is usually a barn burner, and they're both ranked, and they're not going to the Big 12 championship game or the playoffs, but they're not just fighting for bragging rights in the state of Arizona. Both of these coaches have been rumored to be moving on. Keep an eye on that. But then the other big thing is they win this game, they could push their way into a New Year's Day bowl. So, all right, we will see you next week. I'm putting it together real quick. There's a chance that Wednesday we're going to do one of the Caribbean baseball games. I'm going to pull it up on Tuesday to see how it works and to see if we can bring it to you. This would be the team that Ronald Acuna Jr. is on. That's all you need to know. And we were thinking about doing them on a lot of these Wednesday nights in December. If it can be brought to you, and if it can, I'm going to do it. First week of January, we're going to bring you the Caribbean series. I'm almost positive we can do that. I'm just not 100% sure about some of the games that are down there being played prior to the Caribbean series. These are qualifiers to get them there because, first of all, there is no English-speaking channel that is going to attempt to call these games. I'm going to try to do it. I just got to make sure I can see it. If I can see it, I'll bring it to you. We'll see you next time. Next week, we'll probably go over, I've started adding some things, but we'll go over the big picture of what the offseason schedule is going to look like. We're coming to you this Thursday on the Once Upon a Pastime series, and we've got some other games, some Braves Country Theater games playing for you in the offseason. I don't know if I'm going to do it every Friday because we're going to try to do these games on for the live games with Acuna, but I do have 3 or 4 more that I do want to hit during the offseason. And I've started piecing together the schedule for next year. We think we can bring 2 to 3 games a year to you, or 2 to 3 games a week along with the Braves games. So in other words, 2 to 3 double headers a week. I got to wait for some of the final teams. There's about 6 teams that haven't released the times for their games. Once they do, I can get something more in stone. But the way we're going to release it is we're going to release it week to week, because if 2 teams are up in the air, we're going to give you the better matchup. In other words, for instance, if there's, let's say it's the Yankees versus the Tigers, and that's a pretty good matchup. But, oh, by the way, at the same time, we could bring you the Reds or even that's probably not a very good example because we're planning on doing a lot of Reds games. But let's just say that the Royals are playing the Pirates. You're like, who the hell wants to watch that? But Paul Skeens is pitching. We're going to do some of that kind of stuff. But most of the games that we're going to bring you on the out-of-town doubleheader, the majority of them are going to be teams that, to start the season, they were in the postseason last year. And then as the season progresses, it's going to be teams that are in the hunt. So, because I'm not going to just lock myself in and tell these different stations that, hey, I'm going to bring you, we'll say, Cardinals, or let's pick two teams that actually made the playoffs this year. Let's say we tell everyone we're going to bring you Phillies versus the Diamondbacks, and we get to August, and both of them are just horrific, or both of them are running away with their divisions. So, but we are going to give you 2 to 3 along with all the Braves games. We'll see you next time, and enjoy your leftovers and enjoy the football for the next 3 days as well. If it's anything like yesterday's games, wow.
Goodbye, sweetheart, well, it's time to go. We're back tomorrow with another show. Well, unless we're fired, we'll talk to you then. Goodbye, sweetheart, goodbye. Goodbye.
Guys and gals, it's time to go. We'll see you on the next show.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
It's closing time, y'all. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Have a great one. On your way out, please like and subscribe. And don't forget to tip your favorite bartender. We'll see you. I'm Mac McGee, signing off for Braves Country Radio.